you got to learn from every single situation, and don't get caught up. Again, what you focus on expands. So don't get caught up on anything that you don't succeed at. Just take what you can learn from that and move on and grow from that so it doesn't happen the next time.
Designed to encourage, empower, and educate real estate professionals by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and this is Calibrate Real Estate. Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and our esteemed guest today is Dan McQuillen from Danberry Company Realtors. Say hi to our audience, Dan.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, gosh, I'm so excited to actually meet you in person. For our podcast audience, they don't know this, so I'll mention it right now. Dan and I were connected actually by Rob Reuter from the National Association of Realtors. Rob suggested that I talk to Dan because I was doing a deal in Ohio and I needed to get connected with a real estate company as well as a real estate attorney. And Dan connected me with one of his good buddies, Nate Zeckman, who's an attorney. And we just closed a deal outside of Toledo, Ohio, which is where Dan is from. And that was in the town of Archbald, Ohio. And Nate Zeckman and I literally just closed that deal just a few days ago, last week. So Dan, thanks so much for connecting us with Nate. And the funny thing about it is I toured your office, got a chance to meet so many wonderful people in your office in Toledo, but I never got to meet you because you were busy doing different stuff. So nice to see you on Zoom today.
Yeah, great to finally meet you.
So Dan and his wife are high school sweethearts, just like my wife, Courtney, and I. So we're kindred spirits there, Dan. And then you've got two boys, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. You're the broker owner, the partner, the grand poobah of Danberry Company Realtors. Let's take just a moment to give a little bit of history, some context around Danberry. You didn't start the company, even though your name is Dan. So it's kind of funny, Dan and Danberry. But talk about the start of the company and then also this big deal that's about to happen. You structured a partnership and then you're going to become a majority owner of the company here in a year or so. So let's talk about Danberry and what that means to you.
Okay, yep. Danberry was founded in 1962 by a gentleman named Dick Lewacki. He was a Yale graduate, and he started it as an insurance company. And he thought, well, real estate goes hand in hand with insurance, so he opened up a real estate company, and he grew it to the #1 company in Northwest Ohio. In the early to mid 90s, a gentleman named Lynn Fruth and Dick Baker bought it. And then about a couple years ago, Lynn Fruth bought his partner, Dick Baker, out. And then myself and then a buddy I went to high school with who was an agent and ran a team here at Danberry, who did about $40 million in production, his team. We partnered up, and then a lady, Maggie Fawcett, is our third partner. She's actually a third-generation broker, and we stole her away from her family-owned business and to come help us. And she's, so all three of us partnered up. We went to Lynn and we said we'd like to purchase the company. And so we negotiated for about a year. And then about a year ago now, we became minority owners with a transition plan. So next year, 2020, we become majority owners, and Lynn stays on board with us for 5 more years and helps us continue what he's built and grow the company. In 2025, then he goes away. So he'll retire at that point.
Wow. You know, I knew that there was this big deal happening. I didn't know about Maggie's Story. That's pretty cool. And I want to dive into that for just a moment to the degree that we can. Just some context for those of you that aren't familiar with Northwest Ohio or Toledo or Danberry. You're operating in 2 states. So Northwest Ohio is very close to Southern Michigan, or Lower Michigan, I think, as a lot of people say in the area. I've learned a lot because Ohio, I made my first trip to Ohio and I flew into Detroit and went south, like the old Journey song says, but went just south of Detroit into Northwest Ohio. And Danberry has around 300 agents. That'll go plus or minus depending on the time that you're listening to this. Last year did approximately $725 million in closed volume on 4,500 transactions. Those are close enough numbers there, but that is incredible production. And the cool thing that I like to think about is that when I started my own real estate company 2 years ago, a lot of people said to me, don't do it. Real estate companies aren't worth anything. From a valuation standpoint, EBITDA for real estate companies is a very low multiplier. It's a pain. Well, it's really cool to know that someone started a real estate company in the 60s and it's been sold now. It sounds like we've got second and third generation now of ownership, which is just really cool to see that there is an ability to pass on ownership. And so let's talk about Maggie. I want to hear that story a little bit more, because I can imagine that that was, pretty interesting as you're pulling from her family business and she's becoming a partner here, and just what that looks like for you in the future, of course, as being a majority owner and things you're excited about.
Yep. So Maggie, like I said, she's a third generation. Her grandpa started the company in Bowling Green, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes south of us. And her uncle was running the company now, and it was her and her cousin were the heir apparents. Bowling Green's a smaller town. They do a lot of stuff, but she saw, we met with her at different conventions and had been recruiting her for years and years. And I think she just saw the opportunity to really do a lot more with us. So it was a very tough decision. I know she was sick about it. I think there was some, I'm not sure her family came to her wedding, but it was, I think in the end, she would do it all over again. It was a great move for her.
It's interesting. One of my biggest moves in my career was in 2011. For the podcast audience that's listened to more than a few episodes, you know this story, but I left my wife's cousin, Matt, and left the company he started to become a partner at another company, very similar to Maggie's situation. And it was the right decision for my family. I said no originally when I got the partnership offer, and my wife heard about, obviously I talked to her about it. I'm like, hey, one of my clients that owns a real estate company had offered for me to come in as a partner and this and that. And she's like, you said no. And I was like, well, I work with Matt. Why would you of course want me to always work with Matt? She's like, wait a second here. She's like, make sure you do the right decision for our family, not just focusing on what works best for that company. And you've always wanted to be an owner. And it was an opportunity for me to be a partner and have an ownership stake. And it was a wonderful decision. So I actually have been through what Maggie's been through. And that's really, really tough. It is heart-wrenching. It is difficult. And you always wonder if it's the right thing. But I will tell you still, I get together on a regular basis with Matt, and I have a stronger relationship now because I feel like we're not at like the exact same level. He's got 5 different companies that he operates, but the whole point is that we have this with this kinship because we're now both owners of real estate companies, and we've kind of doing our own thing. So good for her. Good for her.
Right.
So a couple of things that we talked about as we're prepping, and you sent me this awesome email just about Danberry. You're focused on a bunch of C's: culture, community. Those are some things that are really kind of the bedrock of serving your community is basically the way that we like to think of Danberry. And so let's talk about the culture, how you focus on a daily basis, and then community aspects, some of the things that your realtors do for community service, not court ordered, but like voluntary community service to make the community better. And the thing I loved about going to Toledo and visiting your office, and guys, I toured their office and had a great time seeing the Danberry Toledo office, is that you could tell everybody's really friendly, and Toledo's just kind of your classic Midwest community where it's a bigger city, of course, but you can tell that there's some real hometown roots there. So let's talk about community and culture in your business.
Sure. Well, we feel that giving back to the community is essential to doing business in the community. So one of the things that we've created was the Danberry Treasure Chest. It's an emergency only fund for the Toledo Children's Hospital. This year will be the 25th year that we've been supporting it. And what we do is we raise funds throughout the year through different office events, different fundraisers. We'll have a cornhole tournament or something like that. And then at the end of every year, we'll do a dinner auction to raise money. Last year, we raised $158,000 for our treasure chest. What it is, yeah. So what it is it's emergency fund only. So for example, we've had situations where we had a mom who had a pregnancy. They weren't expecting the kid to survive birth. The kid did survive birth, but was born with many issues. Well, the mom didn't have a car, and they had to go to see different specialists every day of the week, and we're like, well, you can't take that baby on the bus. So, you know, we stepped in, purchased a car for this family. One of the most gut-wrenching stories was there was a family. They have a mom and dad. They had 7 kids. The mom was a stay-at-home mom. The dad was the only breadwinner. The middle child got sick. In the meantime, the dad got in a car wreck, got incapacitated, couldn't work, lost his job. So now they had no money, and 7 kids. The middle child ended up passing away. In this poor family, they didn't even have enough money to pay for the funeral. So again, the treasure chest came in and stepped in and paid for that. Those are some of the extreme cases. A lot of times too, it's something as simple as paying utility bills for a family just till they can get back up on their feet. And the cool thing is, a lot of these families will repay us once they are back on their feet, and they do appreciate it. So it's always exciting to see that.
And I would imagine you don't require them to pay it. It's just one of those things that they feel like they were in a tough spot and they needed help, and they didn't expect this benevolence. And that's what a lot of community organizations will call it, as a benevolence fund, where someone's just in a spot where they have this crazy circumstance that happens, and all of a sudden they're just really down and out, and you step in to help, which is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. They are definitely, they are not required to pay it back by any means, but
you know,
yeah.
You didn't know this because I intentionally didn't share it with you during our prep. But I was in a family, growing up in a family of 6 kids. My brother, so I'm the oldest. Child number 3 was my brother, Billy. Billy died in 2011 of a heart condition that he was born with called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And that rocked my family. He was 24 years old. So, I mean, we had lots of years with him, and it wasn't like it was completely unexpected, but throughout his life, we had several organizations like Ronald McDonald House that came in. We had lots of different just community outreach things that knew that Billy was special needs special needs kind of, you didn't see it on the outside. He looked like a normal kid. A lot of it wasn't cognitive. A lot of it was his heart issue. But my parents, there was a period of time where we stayed at Ronald McDonald House for weeks. My dad was a stockbroker, which is kind of a similar industry to real estate, where he would work his tail off during the week. My mom was in Philadelphia. We lived near Washington, D.C., and then he would drive up to Philadelphia on the weekend to see them and then come back. And can you imagine trying to be in sales, 100% commission in the 80s in the stock market? Just like, how do you decompartmentalize or compartmentalize like what's going on in your family, and then being able to produce? It's just a wonderful thing that you do this for families, and being one of those children who benefited from it, I think it's work that's very worthwhile. And we've done a couple of different things personally, and this is not to toot my own horn, but when Billy died, I didn't really know how to deal with it. I'd never really had someone that close to me pass away, certainly not someone in my family, not someone I grew up with, and not someone younger than me. So it was just like, how do I combine real estate and wanting to impact the community in a positive way? And so I started chipping off a piece of every commission that year that he died, and started to donate that to Children's Hospital. And they have this plaque program, this wall plaque program, that if you give a certain amount of money, all those names will be, that it was donated in memory of, will be memorialized at Children's Hospital of Denver on the plaque. And so that was a really cool thing. We donated to Ronald McDonald House. We did all these breakfasts, like all these different things. And it was a great way of grieving and being positive in the grief. And that's, I think, what I would imagine that your Danberry Treasure Chest does is you're able to come alongside someone in an absolute storm and help them out. So these extreme examples, what are some of the everyday examples of just the treasure chest and things that happen where you just help people out?
Yeah, well, some of the other ones, a newborn was born with breathing issues. So the social workers went home and checked out their living arrangements before they sent them home. And this one family had, their house was just covered in mold. So like, there's no way you can bring your kid home. So we stepped in, we cleaned up the mold for them, or hired a company to do that. Another situation where another baby was living in a duplex, and and the unit next door got bed bugs, and it got all over the baby, got in the breathing or the eating tube. And so, so again, we put them up in a hotel for a short period of time and had the place fumigated. And so it's things like that.
So how do you because I'm interested in how this works and would love for Calibrate Real Estate in Denver to be able to do something like this. And I'm asking because I'm really interested in finding a way to make something like this happen. How do you get applications, for lack of a better term, or how do you know? Because most of the time when someone's dealing with something crazy, it's like, they're not like broadcasting it everywhere. Like you hear from a friend of a friend of a friend, or like, how do you know about these emergency situations? And then how do you step in to intervene on some of these examples you've mentioned?
Yep, that's a good question. So the treasure chest is set up through the Toledo Community Foundation. So it's mostly social workers that know of these funds being available. So what they do is they'll fill out an application for some funds, and then it goes to an independent non-Danberry panel of people who say, okay, who qualifies for the funds and who doesn't. And you know, we raise the funds, and we tell this panel, say, hey, we raise these funds to give to people. So make sure you're pretty liberal giving it out. We don't want it just sitting there. We want to
yeah, don't be hoarding it. We'll raise more money.
Right, exactly.
Well, and so a couple of other stats that you shared with me, that Danberry has raised over $1.2 million since its inception about 24 years ago. And then we'll talk about the community benefits awards last year, that you logged over 5,000 volunteer hours. And this year the goal is 10,000. And that was the little joke I made that, you know, community service is a big thing. It's not court mandated. So let's talk about the Danberry community benefits. And people that are listening to our podcast are like, wait, aren't we supposed to be talking about real estate? But the point is that as realtors, we are heavily involved in the community. We benefit, of course, from people buying and selling in our community. And so having a way, and I don't like to use the word give back or the words give back, because it feels like you owe something. But I love the way of just saying like, hey, this is an ability to benefit our community and really help people that don't have the blessings that we might have.
You're absolutely right. So the first book, when an agent joins our company, we give them the book, The Go-Giver, and it talks about giving.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes from. So we've had the treasure chest for, like you said, 24 years, and that's near and dear to a lot of people's heart. But we understand that a lot of other people have a lot of other causes that are important to them. So what we've created was the Danberry Community Benefits Program. This will be the 4th year that we do it, and every year we'll throw a really cool party at somewhere unique. It'll be a unique thing, and all you have to do to get admission to the party is 4 hours of community service. And we understand that a lot of people don't volunteer because to get recognition. That's not why they're doing it. So what we do is we say, okay, just fill out the hours. We'll submit them to another panel of non-Danberry people. Say, okay, who did the best, or who had the most interesting, or who did the most work, and then they'll judge that. And then we will give that, whoever the agents are who won, we'll give them money, $1,000 for the top volunteer person that they can donate in their name to any organization that they want. And second place is $500, and third place is $300. Last year, one of our top agents was so moved by the 3 people who have won and what they've done for the community that she matched us. So we were able to double the amount that we gave to these organizations. So it was a lot of fun. So anyway, so the price of admission is 4 hours of community service. You have to fill out an application to get invited. But what that's done is that's really built our culture here at the company as well, because a lot of people will around the office are like, man, are you going to that party? We want to go to that party. And like, no, I haven't got my hours in. So then we'll look for somewhere, and we do a weekly email with different volunteer opportunities. And then, you know, a group of agents will say, okay, let's go clean up a playground, meet at the office at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll go mulch it, and we'll have fun, and then we'll order pizza afterward. Or right now, we're also the longest serving organization for mobile meals. So every Monday morning, 2 of our agents will get together and deliver meals. And we've been doing that for 20 plus years. So again, that goes to the culture thing. You know, they hang out, it's one-on-one time. You're not talking real estate. You're out doing good for the community. So that's what we really pride ourselves on.
Wow, I love that. And culture is one of these things in our society, and especially in business, that I think gets confused. everybody has a culture, right? Culture is just simply the collective people that are in an area and what their ideas and beliefs are. And so if you go to a different country, they have a different culture. And I think everybody talks about culture, but they don't realize that you can have a negative culture as well as you can have a positive culture. You can have a beneficial culture and you can have a toxic culture. And I love that you've established this, that this is going to be so ingrained in what we do that people are like, hey, you're going to go to the event? And they're like, no, man, I haven't got my hours yet. I got to get them. And like, it becomes a part of the daily discussion, which is just so cool. For those of you that maybe heard that for a second and then maybe missed it, The Go-Giver, that book is an incredible book. It was written by Bob Berg, and I have talked about a lot of books on my podcast. I believe that leaders are readers. And so for any of you listening to the podcast, if you send an email to info, I-N-F-O, at calibrate.re.com, the first 5 people to do that, I will give you a copy of The Go-Giver, because I think that that book is incredible. Another book that's helped establish your culture that I know a lot about is a book called Ninja Selling. Ninja Selling is a book that we had mentioned on our past podcast with Scott Stedman at length. And we've had a couple of people actually email info@calibrate.re to get their free copy of it. We have 3 copies left that haven't been given. So let's talk about Ninja Selling and how that has also benefited your culture.
Yeah. So about 3 or 4 years ago, Lynn and myself went out to Fort Collins, Colorado, and went through a Ninja installation. And we looked at each other and just blown away. And we're like, we have to bring this back to Toledo, Ohio. And so since then, we've done an installation once a year for the last 4 years. And it's changed people's lives. I mean, and it sounds kind of cliche, but I mean, I've seen it happen, and it's incredible. You know, it's a 4-day training process. First day, you don't even talk about real estate. You just talk about mindset, focus, getting in the right state of mind. The second day then talks about flow and staying in contact with your clients and your sphere of influence and providing value. And then you get into listing and buyer presentations the next 2 days. But I mean, it's a phenomenal program. Larry Kendell does a great job. Peter Parnick's the guy who comes out and does the installations for us. But using that towards culture, what that does is, you know, after all the installations, then we have skills groups in all the different offices. So anybody who's gone through the installation, they'll meet weekly or every other week, and then they'll talk about, you know, they'll share best ideas. They'll make sure everybody's staying on a ninja path, because everything that ninja is going to teach you, it's stuff that's easy to do, but it's also very easy not to do. So that's why it's like a support group. They get together, they pull for each other, they cheer for each other, they help each other out, and they make sure they're on the right path. So that's good. As a company, then, you know, flow, you'll hear a lot about flow and ninja. It's our goal as a company to do a lot of this stuff, provide a lot of flow items for our agents so that they're not out looking for different things that they're trying to create or anything like that. So for example, let me give you an example. We just partnered with a company right now and it's called Lolo. And what they do is locals supporting locals. And so our agents, for $1 a month per client, minimum 50 clients, so $50 a month, they set up their clients in the database, and we'll help them set it up for them. But their clients will get a text message and an email with the gift of the month. So it'll be, you know, the first month was 2 cups of coffee at a local coffee house. So everybody's clients got it. All they had to do is go redeem it. The coffee house, they actually get full price for the coffee. Danberry pays them for the full price for the coffee. And again, it only costs our agent $1. And the response has been unbelievable. People love it. They're like, oh, wow, my agent's thinking about me. And what it's doing is it's helping us stay in the flow, because we can send out an email every month at the beginning of the month, say, hey, this is the gift of the month that's coming out. We can see if it's redeemed. So we can call and say, hey, how was the cup of coffee? For Valentine's Day, we did a rose at a local flower shop. So it's really cool. It's building momentum, and that's just one of the things that we'll do. You know, we also provide a electronic newsletter for our agents that they can customize if they want, or they don't have to do anything. And it's kind of a set and forget kind of thing. It goes out automatically on their behalf. Again, we want to support our agents doing that so that they can do what they do best, and that's go out and find buyers and sellers and list houses and write contracts. So we're really trying to take a lot of that off their plate and give them that opportunity to stay in touch with their clients.
Well, Dan, I love that you intentionally interact with your agents using Larry Kendall's Ninja Selling Program. Larry is a legend in Colorado. I mean, Fort Collins, as you probably noticed, is very similar to Toledo. It's a suburban and kind of secondary city, you know, Denver being the capital and being kind of the hub. Fort Collins is real similar to Toledo. And one of the things, for those of you that might remember, Scott Stedman was on our podcast earlier this month talking about flow. You had also mentioned what you focus on expands, and that's all about mindset. So I'm actually going to read from Ninja Selling here, page 30. And so we're going to paraphrase a little bit of page 30, but for those of you that don't have Ninja Selling, we will give you a copy. All you got to do is just send an email to info@calibratere.com. So it starts on page 30. When Mother Teresa was invited to an anti-war rally, she declined the invitation. When you have a peace rally, I will attend, she said. She understood. Focus on what you want, and in parentheses, peace, versus what you don't want, war. Another example of this shift in perspective is what we used to have a war on cancer. Now we have a race for the cure. So it's race for the cure, not war on cancer. The next section I just absolutely love. The quality of my life, in italics here. The quality of my life will be determined in large part by the amount of time I spend on the positive pathway of my RAS. Being able to recognize I am going down the negative pathway, arresting those thoughts, changing them, and headed down the positive pathway is very important skill for me to develop. The player lives on the positive path. Victims tend to spend most of their lives focusing on what they don't want, and as a result, manifesting more of what they don't want in a negative feedback loop. Your ninja morning routine and having positive measurable goals will help you stay on the positive RAS pathway. RAS, reticular activation system, is in your brain. So, I mean, I consume this stuff on a regular basis. We give these books out. One of my teammates is reading the book this weekend, texting me saying, this book, I can't put it down. It is awesome. And so, I mean, it is just so great that as a local boutique company, locally owned and operated, that you're benefiting your agents by really saying, guys, you may not know about this program, but you've got to go. This has become such a culture amplifier and exponentially helps your culture. So that's just a little, if you've never heard of Ninja Selling and this is the first time you're hearing it from Dan and I, it is just an awesome program.
It's powerful stuff for sure.
So let's talk about education. You know, that ties into Ninja Selling, and then also Design House. And you already talked about the Lolo program. I love keeping things hyper local, but let's talk about education and the Design House and some more benefits that Danberry does for their agents.
Yep. Okay. So education-wise, we have a full education director. Every month we do about 6 to 12 hours of free continuing education for our agents. We also have new agent training every Saturday. We have 5 sessions, runs from 9 to 12. And it's open for anybody, even the veteran agents, if they just want a refresher. But then also our education director is also our mentor. So especially as new agents, when you're coming in, it feels like you're drinking out of a fire hose. And she'll actually sit down with them and say, okay, look, focus on these 5 things first, and then do these, and then next week we'll get together and I'll give you 5 more things to do. And so that's been really powerful. You know, a lot of new agents come in and they say, do you have a mentor program? Do you have a mentor program? And until a year ago, we didn't. And we said, this is what everybody wants, so let's give it to them. And so far, that's been a great success. Besides the CE and education, we'll also do a company roundtable once a month. We usually try to make that the hot topic of the month. Some of our better ones are agent-led, where we'll take our top 5 agents and we'll do a panel on what they've done to become successful, and, you know, hey, focus your time here, don't do this, don't get sucked into this trap. And it's a real good Q&A and good discussion. So our roundtables have been fantastic. We have a ton of technology, so we do have a technology director on staff too, who will meet with our agents. There's five initial setup appointments with a new agent, and Erin, our tech girl, and she gets them up and running. And like I said, a lot of times they don't know how to export a contact list from LinkedIn or something and put it into our CRM that we give to them. So we'll just do it for them, because if we realize if we're not going to actually do this for them, they may never do it. So we actually do it for them. We set them up on the Lolo, the newsletter, for our agents. So that's some of the education, again, the ninja. And then the design house, this is really cool. So my partner Kevin came up with this last year, 2 years ago. And what it is we have a studio in our main office. You can go in there, you can get photos done, headshots. We offer free headshots every year to keep people's photos updated. We can do videos there. The cool thing is then also you can download the app to your phone. So if I'm listing your house with you and I'm sitting in your living room, I can go right on there and I can schedule a professional photographer to come out and take photos of the home. So we really push the professional photography because, as you know, people, their first showing's not when they're walking through a house, it's when they're scrolling on their iPad looking at home. So we got to get them interested enough to actually set the appointment to walk through the house. So the design house does that. We do Matterport as well for our agents. We've also just started interior design and also cleaning. So right now I'm with you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I can say, look, you got a lot of stuff you need to do. You need to declutter the house. You need to do some painting. I'm not the expert on this, so why don't I have my interior design lady come in, schedule an appointment right there. She'll come in and say, okay, you need to do this, this, and this. Once the work's done, let me know. We'll get our cleaning crew in there. They'll go in and clean the house. And then they also have the option too, while the house is listed, the sellers could hire them to come out weekly or however often to keep the house clean. And once the house is clean, we send out our photographers and it's usually a 24-hour turnaround once they take the photos to when we get them back. We load it up on the MLS for them. We also give them links so they can share it to Facebook, social media, all that stuff. So it's really been a game changer for us having this design house. The other thing, agents, if they want to do personal branding, they can do brainstorming sessions with some of our girls there. They'll say, okay, we can create whatever, business cards, postcards, flyers, whatever. I think one of the things we just did recently was actually pretty cool. One of our agents did an advertisement on a curling rink, and he advertised his team. So they sat down and they spent a lot of time together and focused on it. And now it's and they just had, I don't know, down at Bowling Green University, I think they had a curling tournament. I'm seeing all these photos on Facebook and I see his logo right there on the rink. So it's pretty cool stuff. So we're truly are partners with our agents, and they come to us with ideas and we get our best ideas from agents, and how can we implement them.
Oh man, that is so cool. And these are things that people are doing in all across the US, all across real estate, nationally, internationally. People are branding. And I love that you say, look, as the agent, and Raj Kassar, our last guest, he's from LA, or from Orange County, I should say, in Southern California. He had mentioned, he's like, look, agents are notorious for having to do so many different things. They're jack of all trades, master of none, and heavy emphasis on master of none, where they're, becoming a bug expert and they're becoming an inspection expert. And, we're expected to be a design expert and expected to be a marketing expert. And I love that you've got these different directors. You've got your tech director, your education director. You've got folks that are helping with branding. And these are all just things that you are doing to benefit your agents and create a reason for them to be there. As a locally owned company, one of the things you're competing with is some of the big box shops that are all across the US. And there's different brands out there, and there are companies that are great at doing this, that are big, large national companies. But it goes to show you that a local influencer, a local company like Danberry, can also be that type of influencer. And I think it's great that you're doing things with design and marketing that are really catered towards your agents. I would love to, what's the name of your education director? I'd love to talk about that for a moment. We didn't plan on this, but what's the name of the education director?
Ashley Redner.
So Ashley does these classes, for lack of a better term. And I'm thinking about my church. We do, for new members, there's a 101 class that's led by typically our lead pastor. And it's kind of like, hey, here's what the church is about. Here's some history about religion, just over centuries and over eons of how religion developed. But then here's what we're about. Here's what we believe. And I think it's so cool to have that culture dunk for your new agents. And she does that, and some other mentoring, different things. So that's cool. How did that develop? And obviously you're about 300 agents, that, you can't just do that with 8 people like I have at Calibrate. How do you develop that type of program?
Right. So she's been really successful doing it, and she says, look, this is what I wish I knew when I came into the industry. This is what was successful. And you know, you meet with our techie girl. She's a techie girl. She's not an agent. So she shows you all the tools, and then Ashley can come in and say, look, here's what the uses are for these tools. This is how you use it. This is when you use it. So she's really developed it. A lot of it's feedback too, that we get as managers, that we give to her from the agents, or the agents say, hey, I want to know this, I want to know that. And we give that to her. So we are an independent company. We are a large brokerage for our area, 300, but we're very nimble. So we can change, we can do what we got to do to make sure that we're serving the needs of our agents to the best of our ability.
Well, you teed me up for my next question. It's the last question I typically ask on every podcast. I might ask you one more in this particular, but when I ask this question of Dear Younger Me, the subtext to it is, it's the advice you wish you knew when you were 22. So Ashley talks about that. This is what I wish I knew, you know. So Dan, for you, what's that advice you wish you knew when you were 22? And a lot of times I'm sure you mentor folks in their 20s. I'm sure there's a lot of people at Danberry in their 20s. What are some tales of the road, if you will, that you wish you knew when you were 22?
Yeah, the biggest thing, don't be scared. You know, go talk to the high producers. See what they did to become successful. Go out and put yourself out there. I mean, that's what you're doing as a real estate agent, is you're really putting yourself out there. So don't be scared to be rejected. The other big thing that I would say is learn the contracts. If you understand the contracts for inside and out, as a new agent, you're not going to get bullied by these veteran agents if you know exactly what's in the contract, how you can help your clients, and to be able to explain a contract. I mean, when you go in and you're working with a client and you're a younger person, it's tough because they're like, well, what do you know about real estate? But if you understand that contract, the pitfalls, ways that you can save your client money or make your client money, that's huge. And even some veteran agents, I just shake my head. Like, they don't know what's in the contract. So study the contracts, and not only the contracts, just always try to get better. Always try to better yourself. Get as much education as you possibly can, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, real estate specific, and there's a lot of people who listen to this that aren't in real estate, but real estate specific, I completely agree with you that the contracts are something that you should be able to communicate every single paragraph of your contract. Now, contracts are different all across America. I learned this from doing that deal in Archbald that we mentioned earlier. It was a Dollar General that Nate Zeckman had to review what's called a purchase and sale agreement that was drafted by the seller's internal legal counsel. So there's no form to review. There's no realtor form to review. In Colorado, we have standardized forms that are done by our division of real estate, our division of regulatory agencies, which is part of that is the Colorado Real Estate Commission. And every paragraph is supposed to stand on its own. And so you should be, and to use those forms, the legal test, if you're being discussed of whether you're negligent or not, is, are you able to explain that to your client in full detail? And if you're not supposed to be using that form. And I think there's so many people who get their license and pretty quickly forget what that contract section of the licensing prep work is. And that's a big deal. It's where you're going to get really, really stuck. And it's where you're going to get in a lot of legal trouble. And you're not serving your client if you don't know the contract. Your job is to explain it to them. And I think with all of these DocuSigns and e-contracts and all these other things, they're creating a lot of efficiency for us. I mean, I remember signing listing agreements and purchase contracts on the back of my trunk as I'm standing outside of a property with someone. And that's all fun. That's nostalgic. That's, 15 years ago, before all of this stuff existed. And I remember faxing contracts, receiving random faxes we didn't even expect the offer, and you get a fax coming through. But I'll tell you, the efficiency really, I think, and I'm sure that you feel this way too, really, I think, prevents people from, you just don't slow down and explain a contract to anybody anymore. People look at it, they sign it, they don't ask you any questions, and then all of a sudden you're in trouble, I think.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, that you I 100% agree. And that is a problem because the agents will send it off. And the way that, we use dot loop, and it's boom, 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 you click, 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 and you sign it and it's done. And I know the client's not reading through that contract nine
No.
times out of 10. So it is very important because you want to explain everything that could happen and not be on the defensive. Like, hey, how's come this is going on? Well, did you read the contract?
Well, and if something does happen, it's the agent that's going to be in trouble, not the buyer, not the seller. I mean, from a
Right.
negligence standpoint, if you're representing that buyer or seller and you have not reviewed that contract with them, you're going to be the one that gets in trouble. And we've all done it. I've asked my clients, I'm like, hey, can I explain the contract to you? No, I'm good. I'm like, really? Because I review about 40 of these, 50 of these a year. And I wouldn't expect that you reviewed it. And so really, really interesting stuff. As we end our show, love to just talk about a message around failure. All right. And so failure is that F word that no one likes to think about, but we've all failed. We've all tried and not succeeded. And so for you, just a little personal pep talk to someone out there that might be listening that's having a rough go and is kind of frustrated that they're not succeeding, that they're failing. And what would you say to that person as you think about it? And I know for me, I stand on a mountain of failure. My success is all through failure. So how did you learn how to handle failure, and what would you suggest out there to our audience?
Failure that's a strong word. I don't think I'd ever say I've failed. I'm not a failure. Granted, I have failed many times, but anytime something that doesn't work, say, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Or I didn't get this listing appointment. Why didn't I get this listing appointment? What could I have done better? So you got to learn from every single situation and don't get caught up. Again, what you focus on expands. So don't get caught up on anything that you don't succeed at. Just take what you can learn from that and move on and grow from that so it doesn't happen the next time. So
I love it. Great advice. And Dan, I am so appreciative of your time today. For those of the people that are out there that don't know much about Danberry and want to research, what's the best way to connect with Danberry, either on social media or on the web? What are some of the ways that people can connect with Danberry?
Yep, you could go to our website, www.danberry.com. We got social media too, so like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. So we are out there. Come find us. I'd love to hear from you guys too, if what you think and what maybe is working for some of the other companies out there, and something maybe we could share some ideas with.
I love
We're all
it.
in this together.
Yeah, we are. We absolutely are, especially independents, boutiques, whether you're small or large. I mean, a lot of boutiques started off very small in the 60s, if you think about the way that Danberry started. And so we are just continuing to celebrate here at the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. We've got over 20 5-star reviews now. We're actually at 22 reviews. If you like this podcast, if you really are interested in what Dan McQuillen has had to say, or Danberry, drop us a note in Apple iTunes, obviously a subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. We are super appreciative. Remember, we are giving away copies of Ninja Selling, Larry Kendall's book that was by Greenleaf. And then we're also giving away copies of The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. So if you just send an email to info@calibratere.com, our podcast producer, Kayla Davis, will catch those and she'll send you out a book. And we've had multiple emails that have come across where we've given these books away. So that's my present to our podcast audience. Dan, thank you so much. I will be definitely following Danberry on social media because after visiting the office and seeing all the friendly folks in Toledo, I'm just so excited to continue to stay in touch with you. So thank you very much for being a guest. And as I love to say, Dan and I, we will see you around the neighborhood. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.